This presentation is created by Anatomy Department, P.D.U Government Medical College Rajkot for first MBBS student of August 2019 admission batch for online lecture considering lockdown status. This is for academic purpose only, without any financial or commercial consideration. In this video, we are going to learn about stomach. Stomach is also known as gaster. It is a muscular organ situated in the epigastrium, left hypochondrium, and umbilical region. It is almost 25 centimeters long. It is J-shaped structure. It is situated in the abdominal cavity in such a manner that its upper end, means cardiac end, is behind the seventh costal cartilage, 2.5 centimeter away from its junction with the sternum, and lower end is situated 1 point at trans-pyloric plane. Gaster or stomach has capacity of 1 liter to 1.5 liter in adults, while in children it has capacity of 30 to 50 milliliters of fluid, specifically in newborn. The shape and position of stomach varies according to the body structure of the person. If the person is thin and lean, the stomach generally lies vertically in such a manner that the vertical limb of the J remains more straight. This type of persons are more prone to gastric ulcer, and this type of persons are known as hyposthenic people. In normal body structure like asthenic people, the stomach is laid in such a manner that it is the vertical limb of J is comparatively oblique. While hypersthenic or obese people with short structure, the stomach lies more horizontal than the vertical. This type of people are more prone to peptic ulcer. Now let's discuss about the external features of stomach. The stomach has two ends. One is the cardiac end, that is also known as the esophageal end. It is actually continuous with the lower part of the esophagus and forms gastroesophageal junction. Its orifice presents a physiological gastroesophageal sphincter which prevents regurgitation of fluid from the stomach to the esophagus. There is no any evidence of anatomical sphincter at gastroesophageal level. On the posterior side of the cardiac orifice, there is no attachment of peritoneum. That's why it is known as bare area of the stomach. Another end is the pyloric orifice. Pyloric orifice lies at the level of transpyloric plane. It can be identified by the thick muscular node on palpation, that is because of the muscular structure of the pyloric end. In addition, we can identify in living person a pre-pyloric vein of myo that also helps for the identification of the pyloric orifice. The stomach has two borders which are also known as curvatures. The one curvature which extends cardiac end to the pyloric end and is concave. This is known as the lesser curvature, or it forms a right border of the stomach. It gives attachment to lesser omentum as well. Here there is an anastomosis between the right and left gastric artery. The most dependent part of the lesser curvature is known as angular notch or incisura angularis. The second border of the stomach is greater curvature. Near the esophageal end, greater curvature shows a notch is known as cardiac notch. This cardiac notch, from this cardiac notch, the greater curvature extends up to the pyloric orifice. It is convex in shape and almost 5 times larger than the lesser curvature. It forms left border of the stomach. It gives attachment to gastrophrenic ligament, gastrosplenic ligament, and greater omentum. We will discuss about these ligaments in next or later slides. The surface visible from the anterior side is known as anterior surface of the stomach. There will be a posterior surface on the postero-inferior side. Stomach can be divided basically in two parts. If we imagine a vertical line from incisura angularis that cuts the greater curvature, then the part proximal to this vertical line is known as cardiac end of stomach or cardiac part of stomach. This area is known as cardiac part of stomach. The part of stomach distal to this imaginary line is known as pyloric part of stomach. Again, cardiac part can be divided into parts. A horizontal imaginary line from the cardiac notch, a part of the stomach, the convex part of the stomach above the horizontal line of at the angular at this line above this part is known as fundus of stomach. It is convex in shape and it is generally filled with air. In X-ray, this air is visible just under the left dome of the diaphragm. It is also visible even in the empty stomach. This area between the horizontal and vertical part is known as body of the stomach. So again, stomach has two parts. One is the cardiac part and second is pyloric part. The cardiac part has two. The fundus of stomach, there is a convex area just above the horizontal line, and another is the body of stomach. That's the pyloric part. This is the incisura angularis, and we have drawn here an imaginary line. Just against the incisura angularis, this dilated area forms the pyloric antrum, known as pyloric antrum. Here we can see a sulcus. This sulcus is known as sulcus intermedius. So pyloric antrum is an area between this imaginary vertical line and sulcus intermedius. The part of the pylorus distal to this sulcus intermedius is known as pyloric canal. It's known as pyloric canal. So again, the pyloric part of the stomach is divided in two parts. One is the pyloric antrum and pyloric canal. Pyloric antrum is almost 7.5 centimeter long and pyloric canal is 2.5 centimeter long. Both parts are separated by a sulcus intermedius. Both parts are separated by sulcus intermedius. This part, specifically the pyloric canal, is covered by the muscular structure. So it is thick nodular structure on palpation. Let's discuss about the relations of stomach. As we know, every abdominal organs has peritoneal and visceral relations. First, we will discuss about the peritoneal relations of stomach. As we know that, as we have learned in the peritoneum, the liver and stomach, in between the liver and stomach, there is a peritoneal reflection. That peritoneal reflection is known as lesser omentum. Again, that lesser omentum is connected on the lesser curvature of stomach. Now, the one layer of lesser omentum runs on the anterior surface of the stomach and another layer runs on the posterior surface of the stomach. At the level of reaching the greater curvature, it forms another peritoneal reflection which is known as greater omentum. In fact, at the greater curvature, it forms three ligaments near the cardiac end. One ligament is known as gastrophrenic ligament that extend from esophageal end to the left crus of diaphragm. Just medial to that left crus of diaphragm, a bare area of stomach is situated behind the esophageal or cardiac end of stomach. Another peritoneal reflection which extends from fundus of stomach to the spleen is known as gastrosplenic ligament. And third, from remaining greater curvature which extends downward, the two layer will goes downward, takes a U-turn and again will ascend, and in such a manner makes a four-layer structure. Four-layer peritoneal reflection is known as greater omentum. You will learn in detail about the lesser omentum and greater omentum in chapter of peritoneum. Let's discuss about the visceral relations of the stomach. It has two surfaces. One is the anterior surface and the posterior surface. We are looking at the stomach from the anterior side. Here, this purple color area shows the relations of anterior surface of stomach related to the liver. It is related with the left lobe of the liver and caudate lobe of the liver. So left lobe of the liver and quadrate lobe of the liver. This green color structure is covered by this part is covered by the left costal margin. So this area is also covered by the diaphragm. The diaphragm separates this area from the lung and pleura. So anteriorly, the anterior surface is related with the left lobe of the liver and quadrate lobe of the liver, and left costal margin and diaphragm, which separates it from the left lung, inferior surface of the left lung and pleura. Sometimes when the stomach is distended, the fundus of stomach is also related with also comes in contact with the spleen. Near the greater curvature, there is a transverse colon. It is also related with the transverse colon. So this area, remaining area between the liver and left costal cartilage, this area comes in contact with the anterior abdominal wall. That comes in contact with anterior abdominal wall. Again, this is the liver, area related with the liver. This area is covered by the left costal margin and the diaphragm. Okay. Now here you can see a triangle made by the boundary of the liver, left costal margin and transverse colon. So this triangular area of stomach between the left margin of the liver, left costal margin and transverse colon, which comes in direct contact with the anterior abdominal wall, this triangular area is known as gastric triangle. Is known as gastric triangle. Sometimes when patient is required to give or to insert a gastric tube for various like gastric lavage or for feeding the disabled people, gastric tube has to insert in the stomach. Whether the gastric tube has reached the stomach or not. To confirm that whether the gastric tube has reached the stomach or not, the doctor auscultate gastric triangle and insert air in the gastric tube. The sound, bubbling sound at this gastric triangle confirms that the tube has reached his stomach. And that's rule out that the gastric tube has not enters in the lung. Sometimes in the complete esophageal obstruction, when patient cannot eat anything from mouth, they may require to incise this area so the food can be given through this part. That is known as gastrotomy approach. So that is a clinical importance of gastric triangle also. Again, gastric triangle is an area of anterior surface of stomach which comes in relation to the anterior abdominal wall, bounded on right side by the lower border of the liver, bounded on the left side by the left costal margin and below by the transverse colon. Okay, here in the same image we can see the another area also, that is a topographical area. Again, let's concentrate here. This is the costal margin, left costal margin. Here will be the lowermost border of the lung pleura, while the inferior border of lung is limited at this level. Okay. So this area between the inferior border of the lung and left costal margin is covered or in relation with the stomach. This area is only pleura of the lung. That means the stomach is related with the costal cartilages and lung pleura and diaphragm in this much area. Above this level, there will be a left lung. Below this level, there will be no lung, only lung pleura. So this area, if we make a boundary of this area between the inferior border of the left lung, right side, left lobe of the liver, inferiorly, left costal margin, and on the left side, spleen. This area is covered by diaphragm, costal cartilages, and lung pleura. This space is known as Trop's space. Now, because there is no any solid organ at this area, if we do percuss at this part, it will have a tympanic sound. It will have tympanic sound. But if there is an accumulation of fluid like in pleural effusion, or if this part is covered by the liver like in hepatomegaly, or if it is covered by the spleen like in splenomegaly, then on percussion this area will give a dull sound. So that is also by percussion of Trop's space we can identify or assume that whether there is a collection of fluid or liver enlargement or splenic enlargement. So that is an importance of the Trop's space. So in the anterior surface of the stomach, there are two important triangles. One is the gastric triangle and second is the Trop's space. Okay. Next slide, we will learn about the visceral relations of the posterior surface of the stomach. This image shows the structures of stomach bed, which are separated from the stomach by the cavity of lesser sac. The structures are left crus of diaphragm, anterior surface of left suprarenal gland, anterior surface of left kidney, splenic artery, anterior surface of pancreas, transverse mesocolon, splenic flexure of colon, and sometimes when the stomach is distended, the fundus of stomach comes in relation to this spleen also. But we must have to remember that spleen is separated from the stomach by greater sac, while other structures are separated from the stomach by the cavity of the lesser sac. We have discussed about the various relations, peritoneal as well as the visceral relations of the stomach. Now let's concentrate on blood supply of the stomach. We already learned, we celiac trunk. Celiac trunk is the ventral branch of the anterior abdominal artery. It supplies the structures derived from the foregut and midgut. It has three main branches. One is the left gastric artery, second is common hepatic artery, and splenic artery. So with that knowledge, let's concentrate on the blood supply of the stomach. First, the lesser curvature of the stomach. This is the lesser curvature of stomach. The lesser curvature of stomach is supplied by left gastric artery and right gastric artery. The anastomosis between the left gastric artery and right gastric artery supplies at the lesser curvature of stomach supplies the stomach. The major part of the stomach is supplied by the left gastric artery. Almost 2/3 part of this organ is supplied by the left gastric artery. That's why it is a major artery of the stomach. Left gastric artery, as we know, it is a branch of the celiac trunk. It gives branches at the esophageal end, which supplies the lower part of esophagus, also known as esophageal branches. Then it anastomosis with the right gastric artery. then gives anterior and posterior branches. Anterior branches runs on the anterior surface of stomach and posterior branches runs on the posterior surface of stomach. Right gastric artery is a branch of hepatic artery proper. It is a branch of hepatic artery proper. At the greater curvature, we can identify two arteries. One is the left gastroepiploic artery and second is right gastroepiploic artery. These both arteries anastomose with each other between the first two layers of greater omentum and then gives vertical longitudinal branches that runs on the anterior surface of the stomach as well as the posterior surface of the stomach, as where they also runs in the greater omentum. This left gastroepiploic artery is a branch of the splenic artery. As we know, splenic artery is the larger branch of the celiac trunk. Again, this left gastroepiploic artery gives branches at the fundus of stomach also. These are known as short gastric artery. It's known as short gastric artery. Again, splenic artery runs on the posterior side of the stomach in gastrosplenic ligament. It gives branch known as left gastroepiploic artery. Left gastroepiploic artery gives branch known as short gastric artery also. And left gastroepiploic artery anastomose with the right gastroepiploic artery also. One more thing, while running on the posterior side of the stomach, the splenic artery gives branches that can reach to the fundus of stomach. These branches are known as posterior gastric artery. Okay. Now, the right gastroepiploic artery is a branch of gastroduodenal artery. Gastroduodenal artery runs behind the pyloric part of the stomach and it gives a right gastroepiploic artery. That right gastroepiploic artery anastomose with the left gastroepiploic artery. So this is the blood supply of the stomach, arterial supply of the stomach. Again, blood supply of the stomach is from the left gastric artery, right gastric artery, left gastroepiploic artery and right gastroepiploic artery, as well as from the splenic artery. In next slide, we will see about the venous drainage of the stomach. As you can see here, the image shows the venous drainage of the stomach. Veins of the stomach corresponds to the arteries and drain directly into the portal vein. The vein drains as follows. Right and left gastric veins drains into the portal vein. Short gastric vein and left gastroepiploic vein drains into this splenic vein. Right gastroepiploic vein drains into the trunk of superior mesenteric vein. As we know, superior mesenteric vein, by uniting with the splenic vein, forms the portal vein. This is the image of lymphatic drainage of the stomach. Stomach is divided into 4 lymphatic territories. the upper side of the left side stomach drains into pancreatico-splenic lymph nodes. These lymph nodes lie along the splenic artery. Lower part of the left side of stomach drains into right gastroepiploic lymph nodes. These right gastroepiploic lymph nodes lie along the right gastroepiploic artery. Lymphatic channels from right gastroepiploic lymph nodes drains into subpyloric lymph nodes. Right side of the stomach drains into left gastric nodes, which lies along the left gastric artery. Lymphatic channels drains left gastric nodes into the celiac nodes, while pyloric part of the stomach drains into the subpyloric, hepatic, and left gastric nodes. All lymph, all lymph nodes like subpyloric, hepatic, and left gastric nodes ultimately drains into the celiac nodes. This image shows the parasympathetic nerve supply of stomach. Stomach has sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. Sympathetic nerves are derived from T6 to T10 spinal nerve, which travels along the greater splenic nerve, celiac, and hepatic plexuses to supply the stomach. Sympathetic nerves, as we know, are vasomotor, motor to the pyloric sphincter, and inhibitory to the other musculature of stomach. And it is the chief pain sensation pathway for the stomach. This is the parasympathetic nerves. The parasympathetic nerves are mainly derived from vagus nerve. This is the anterior view of the stomach, and we can see the anterior gastric nerves, which mainly contains the left vagal fibers. The anterior gastric nerves divides into various branches to supply the stomach, fundus, and body. One branch reaches to the pyloric antrum, which is known as anterior nerve of Latorjet. The posterior view of the stomach, and we can see the posterior gastric nerve or the posterior vagus nerve, which mainly contains the fibers of right vagus nerve. It also gives a branch which reaches to the pyloric antrum, which is known as posterior nerve of lateral jet. It also gives a large branch to celiac ganglion known as celiac branches. Discuss now about the structure of stomach. Stomach has from outside inward, they are adventitia or serosa. Second is muscular. Muscular layer has three types of muscles. From outside inward, they are longitudinal, circular, and oblique. The inner to oblique layer, third layer is submucosa, and fourth is mucosa. You will learn in detail about these layers in histology. Now, mucosa is thrown into folds on the inner side of the stomach. These folds are known as gastric ragi. As well, in the internal side, we can see a various pits. It's known as gastric pits, which receives the secretion of the gastric glands. Again, the mucosa of the stomach is thrown into folds, which is known as gastric ragi. As well, we can see the gastric pit. Here, you can see from pyloric end to the from cardiac end to the pyloric end of one deeper sulcus-like structure at the lesser curvature of stomach. This structure is known as gastric gutter. It is also known as Meighen's trace. It is also known as Meighen's trace. This Meighen's trace is vulnerable to the injury because of fluid drink by a person. One more thing, this area has less blood supply. The mucosa is tightly adherent to the deeper lying muscular structure, and that's why there are more chances of injury in this Meighen's trace because of the drinking fluid. So any type of fluid which has more potential to damage mucosa, like caffeine containing structures like tea or alcohol, can damage this area, and therefore gastric ulcer is common at Meighen's trace or gastric gutter. Let's discuss about certain applied anatomy of the stomach. You may have learned about this hernia in diaphragm also. We know that the diaphragm has esophageal opening. Sometimes a fundus of stomach may pass through the diaphragm in addition to the esophagus. This hernia is known as rolling hiatal hernia. Instead of entering the fundus of stomach, the gastroesophageal junction is pulled upside towards the thoracic cavity. This is known as sliding hiatal hernia. Sliding hiatal hernia is more common than the rolling hiatal hernia. Gastric ulcer and peptic ulcer. It is a very common condition. The gastric ulcer typically occurs at the lesser curvature. As we discussed, this is possibly due to the following peculiarities of lesser curvature, like it is homologous with the gastric trough of the ruminant. The mucosa is not freely movable at the lesser curvature of the stomach. The epithelium is comparatively thin at the lesser curvature, and blood supply is less at this part. As well, it has a more nerve supply, and because of gastric canal, it receives more insults from the drinking fluid, and being shorter, it will have a long wave of contraction which remains for longer time, and there is a more chances of H. pylori infection is lesser curvature. So ulceration or breach of mucosa at this part is known as gastric ulcer. Generally, breach of mucosa of the fundus or body of the stomach is known as gastric ulcer. To the contrary, peptic ulcer is the ulceration or breach of mucosa at the level of the pylorus, first part of duodenum or mucous diverticulum. It mainly occurs at the sites of the pepsin and hydrochloric acid. So that is the minor difference between the gastric ulcer and the peptic ulcer. For the treatment of the gastric ulcer and peptic ulcer, sometimes vagus nerve is cut down at the as we know about the branches of the vagus nerve can be cut down for various levels. If the vagus nerve is cut, if the whole vagus nerve is cut, then it is known as truncal vagotomy. Only section of the vagus nerve done at the lateral jet, nerve of lateral jet, then it is known as selective vagotomy. Highly selective vagotomy, where only branches of nerve of lateral jet are cut, which supplies the acid bearing area of stomach, then it is known as highly selective vagotomy. So for the treatment of gastric ulcer or peptic ulcer, vagotomy is done. Depending on the level of section, it is known as truncal vagotomy, selective vagotomy, or highly selective vagotomy. If the main trunk of the both vagus nerve are cut, then it is known as truncal vagotomy. If only the nerve of lateral jet is cut, then it is known as selective vagotomy. And even branches of nerve of lateral jet are cut, then it is known as highly selective vagotomy. There is one more important applied anatomy known as hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. Pyloric stenosis are of two types. One is congenital and second is acquired. We will discuss about first the congenital. In newborn child, sometimes there is a spasm of pyloric muscle. So the pyloric orifice remains in the contracted and closed state. That's why the food cannot enter the duodenum. The food will remain in the stomach. So specifically, the congenital pyloric stenosis is seen in newborn child, and specific clinical symptoms are the child continues crying and there is a swelling in its epigastrial region after first or second days of the birth. Okay. Generally, Ramstedt operation is the operation of choice, where a vertical incision is put at the pyloric part that will relieve the contracted state of the muscle. Sometimes acquired pyloric stenosis is also seen in adults. The operation remains the same. The procedure or surgical intervention remains the same. So this condition is also known as congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. You have understood about the stomach, blood supply of the stomach and nerve supply of the stomach, and most of the things we try to explain you in brief and in easy language. The more detailed explanation of more detailed study of blood supply and nerve supply will be uploaded soon on our YouTube channel. Thank you. We will continue such sessions in futures also. Please subscribe this channel